Good morning, happy Monday, and welcome to another edition of A Peek Inside SEC Football. This is our live show where we recap some of the biggest SEC games of last weekend and preview some of the biggest ones coming up this next weekend. Allie Peak, TJ Pittinger, Will Thomas, we are hanging out yet again. Guys, amazing weekend of college football. Well, you were at a wedding, though. I know we all agree on this show, no fall weddings. So
No.
TJ and I were really feeling for you this weekend, but we definitely did our job and watched on your behalf.
Yeah, thank you. It was pretty tough to be fantastic time. Had an awesome time. Really tough to just have to keep looking at my phone and seeing how there was 2 more touchdowns scored in Tennessee game, but I didn't know what happened. Just all that. It was but yeah, it seemed like it was an incredible week, and I'll get to watch them this weekend, I guess. It's fine.
You will. This was a great weekend for me in particular because I didn't have to stress about my team losing because my team was off.
Just get ready, though. Yeah, you can start right now, though.
No reports on whether or not my team won or lost the bye week, but yeah, this week becomes stressful. But this was, there was just so many good games. Let's start with Alabama, Georgia. Maybe because I picture that as like the most marquee game, although that's really hard to say because there was, I guess it is rankings wise, right? But there just was so many. Yeah, that one too. But we're an SEC show, so we don't care about them. So many good games, but this one was interesting. Did the Alabama team that we saw week 1 against Florida State, was that a fluke? I locked away from week 1 thinking Kalen DeBoer's Alabama is not Nick Saban's Alabama. I walked away this past Saturday night going, damn, Alabama is for real. I don't know if you guys saw any of my tweets, but that was just some incredible coaching on both sidelines. And it's something that as a Florida fan, I'm incredibly jealous of because that is what big boy football looks like. We saw it. It was blow for blow, back and forth. It was interesting to see DeBoer have Kirby Smart on his heels a little bit. This is the one team that Kirby Smart does not have a winning record against. And is he 1-9 now?
I think he's 1-7. He's 1-7, but they've won, but they're 1-11 overall against Alabama the last 11 games, or 1-10. Sorry.
Is that Will? Is there something to this jinx there? Why can Kirby Smart, who I have gone on this show and said time and time again, I think he is the best current coach in college football. How in the world can he not get this monkey off his back?
I think at the end of the day, it's just that Alabama is still Alabama. And like you said, even after that week 1 game against FSU, I thought that might not have been true. But it's clear that, credit to FSU in that game. They just absolutely jumped Alabama, and they had no chance of punching back. But Alabama's they're still a really good football program. And just going to this game a little more, pregame, I really thought Georgia was going to be able to lean on Bama running the ball. And I feel like I was kind of right about that. 33 carries for 227, almost 7 yards per run. But Bama's offense had a really good day. I thought Georgia's defense was stronger than it looked like it is. Seems like that defense has a few things to be desired, but Ty threw for 276 and 2 touchdowns. I thought Jam Miller was just okay in his return, but that makes sense given that he wasn't, full go 100% doing everything that he could. But, drops are just destroying Georgia still. I know that Ryan Williams had one, but I forget who it was for Georgia because obviously I saw it on Twitter while I was on the dance floor. But just dropping open to go ahead touchdowns in the second half. It's just something about Georgia in big spots where just these mistakes that you don't normally see, whether it's drops or just, not being able to get over the hump, they just kind of happen. And it happens against Bama because I do think Bama is, still the, kind of landmark program of the conference, even though they've been down a little bit. And they're clearly not dead in the SEC, Bama is, because it's wide open. But I almost kind of walked away after I was looking at this game are we even sure that this was actually a battle of the Titans, or was it just 2 evenly matched teams? Because I do think that these are 2 of the better teams in the SEC, but with how open the league is and with how it seems like every roster sort of has their own questions, this might not have even necessarily been, look at these incredible teams going back and forth. Maybe it was just 2 good teams who are pretty even. But both teams I do think are solid. They're both be competing in the SEC. Just an awesome game that I didn't get to see any of.
TJ, what did you think? Was this the Alabama team that you watched week 1 or something else?
Yeah, to go a little so on Alabama, yeah, they definitely played better. And I will say this, the one thing that like the knock on DeBoer was always that they struggled in games that they shouldn't have struggled in, right? Like they didn't lose. I mean, maybe outside of that Tennessee game, but like they weren't losing to teams. They got up for the big games.
I mean, they lost to Vandy, right?
Right, that's what I'm saying. I mean, Vandy was, a nice story for them, but what did they go 6-6 anyway? Like it's not like they were like world beaters. They were losing the games they weren't supposed to. A terrible Oklahoma team, a terrible Vandy team, a Michigan team with all their team out, Florida State as a 2-touchdown favorite. But they got up for the big ones. When you think back to the Georgia game last year, when you think about, just his career in general, I think he's 2-0 against Kirby Smart, 2-0 against Steve Sarkisian, 2-0 against Brian Kelly, and 2-0 against Dan Lanning. He gets his team up for these big games. And so I'm not really that surprised. Like I think we all picked Georgia. I'm not surprised that Alabama won. I didn't think Georgia was going to blow them out. I just thought, man, you need to show me something that you can actually win on the road, which is where they struggled. I think it's almost more big picture than this because there's no way we're playing like transitive property game with different things. I know we don't talk much about, the other conferences, but just the way that, and Bama's running game wasn't like elite or anything. They went over 100 yards, but just the way that the parity in college football seems to be so much different. And I think that is because we are moving to what's closer to an NFL game, an NFL model, and you're just never as good as you were your last week, and you're never as bad as you were your last week. Like teams rebound. If I would have told you that Florida State was going to hold Alabama to 80 yards rushing and give up 250 to Virginia, you'd be like, no chance in hell. Like that's just not going to happen. And by the same token, if I told you that Alabama was going to go get waxed by Florida State and then go into Georgia and dominate them up front and their lines of scrimmage look so much different, you'd have been like, are you sure about that? Like, did you see what Georgia did in the last 3 quarters against Tennessee? So I do think that that's just bigger picture than just Alabama. I think that's part of our game now where there is more parity. And Bama looked great on Saturday, right? There's no doubt. They also have to play Vandy this week. They got to play Oklahoma. They got to play LSU, which we'll talk about that game in a minute too. They got to play Tennessee. There's a lot left on this schedule to where Bama could very well go 11-1 and they could very well go 8-4. Now, it's probably somewhere in the middle of that. They probably go 9-3 or 10-2. But I just think with the parity in college football, that's kind of what we're going to have from now on. Like we're not going to see teams just that's Alabama 12-0 or that's Georgia 11-1. I think we're going to see more of this. And that's terrible for, the fans of teams that want to win every game, but it is good. It's good for the sport. I mean, I don't care. It's good for me to kind of see more fun games back and forth. So I think it's not just Bama. I think it's the sport in general.
I don't know. I watched all weekend long. I saw a lot of really good games. I did feel like those two teams looked different than most of the other teams. I still think that and that doesn't mean that the parity gap hasn't closed. I think it has. I think there's more college football parity than we have ever seen any other year. And we'll probably be able to say the same thing the next year, that the next year is the most we've ever seen because that's what NIL does for us. But I still felt like they looked like Titans compared to some of the other teams that were in great games that I enjoyed watching.
But on that, so here's my point with that, though. I think the same way it was easy for Florida State to get up for Bama, and it was easy for Virginia to get up for Florida State this week. And maybe you saw Bama not have their foot on the pedal in that week 1 game, and maybe you saw Florida State not have their foot on the pedal in the Charlottesville game on Friday night. I think it's easy for both Bama and Georgia to get up for this game, but what does Bama do in 2 weeks, right? What does Georgia do in 3 weeks when you're not playing as good of an opponent? And I think that's what's tough. The mental side of the game is what's the absolute toughest to me is getting up for 12 games, 12 weeks in a row, not reading your own press clip, like all those things. And so, but I do agree. Like I think those are the 2 teams that you'll probably see in Atlanta. If you're basing kind of what we've seen so far.
The eye test is what,
But can they get out? Like, both of those teams can go out and lay an egg next week, right? There's no doubt. So, I'm not saying they will. Obviously, Bama has a big one that we'll talk about later. But I think that's what makes it the toughest is can you continue to get up?
Yeah. Definitely getting up every single week in this conference now with the parity that is coming to college football, and it's here. All right, so to recap that, Alabama beat Georgia 24-21, was an incredibly exciting and fun game to watch, particularly when you don't have a dog in the fight. Let's no pun intended. Kirby still can't get the elephant off his back, I guess we'll call it.
What did you think about his comments? They asked him about that, his 1-7 record. And he just said, like,
he said essentially, what is everybody else's record about it? And, and he's right. He is. I mean, we're saying, hey, the very best team consistently in your conference over the last decade, you aren't good against that very best team. Is that a problem? And it's not outside of the fact that Georgia won 2 in a row. Georgia could have won 3 in a row. Georgia has been incredibly good during the same time span, but has struggled specifically with Alabama. Kirby has a winning record, I believe, against every other coach in the SEC. So that's why the question's going to get asked, because you are so good. You are the top of your field, except for when this team comes to town. And it has to bother him behind closed doors. He can say whatever he wants about, look at everybody else's record against him and it doesn't bother me. And then he goes home and he has a voodoo doll of now Kalen DeBoer, was Nick Saban. And it absolutely bothers him because he is a competitor and you want to pound your opponent, whoever it is, but certainly if it's somebody that continues to get your number. But I love everything about Kirby Smart. The fire that he brings to the sidelines is what I want to happen on my team. I love the passion that he plays for, that he coaches for. One of the things that I thought was interesting after the game, you watched him while the camera was kind of panning around, he went and talked to a lot of the Georgia players. And I thought it was interesting while I watched it happen live. But somebody asked him about it in the presser, and he basically said, I wanted them all to know that I knew that they had worked their butt off and done their best, and that it wasn't just on the players, that I need to do a better job coaching, that it's not just that they need to do a better job playing. I need to put them in better positions, and that we all share a little bit of the accountability in this loss. And I think that that's such a great message in a moment that could be really heated. You could be really pissed off about somebody that got a penalty at an inopportune time or, stepped out of bounds, didn't make the catch, whatever the reason is, but that wasn't what he was doing. He was still coaching them up. And that at the end of the day is what college football is about. And you love to see that work still being put in, even in what was probably a very tough moment for all of them. But I thought the passion on both sidelines was so evident. It jumped through the screen at me, and it probably is because I feel like I'm in a position where there's none of that for my team. So I'm probably hypersensitive to it, but that's what it takes to win. And so being able to see that, I think is cool.
Right. I wonder with this too, not to minimize it too, but like Kirby also knows, as frustrating as it is with his record against Alabama, it doesn't really matter.
Hasn't kept him from winning that.
And that sucks for us as college football fans because, 15 years ago, this game would have been pretty close to like
out already, essentially.
Yeah, it would have been close to it would have been an elimination game for Alabama. Mm-hmm. Like if they'd have lost this game, they'd have been out. Like there's no way they were getting in. Right, in the BCS era. And so, Kirby also knows that, like, dog, this doesn't matter. Like, I will make adjustments, and if we see them again, like, they've got an easier road than Alabama to get to Atlanta. And so I think he cares because he's a competitor and doesn't, but he also knows, like, the goal of this season was not to beat Alabama. And we've still, hey, we didn't play our best. We lost the turnover battle. We lost the total yardage. We lost a lot of things in this game. We cleaned up a couple of things and we'll be just fine. So, the game is so much different than it was 15 years ago.
Yeah, I'm definitely not worried about Georgia long-term or anything. I mean, their defense definitely does look softer, but that's relative to, the 11 murderers that they were throwing out there in 22 and 23. Yeah. So a lot of Georgia, like we hold them to this standard now at this point where they should be an NFL team basically, but it's not going to happen, especially with the portal and the parity we have now. So, I mean, you're totally right. I'm not worried about Georgia long term at all. I'm not worried about them missing the playoff. So they should be totally okay. And if they do see Bama again, they'll have a different game plan. They'll probably double Caden Proctor out wide next time, and they should be a little better off.
All right, well, if we're lucky, we see this one again. But let's talk about another game. This was a barn burner. Tennessee, Mississippi State. This one went into overtime. Such a good game. My brother-in-law is a massive Tennessee fan. His dad played for the Vols, and so watching this game with him, watching him have a heart attack was really cathartic for me. It was fabulous. But they pulled it out. But is this Mississippi State team for real? I mean, what a run that they have been on. They obviously lost 41-34, but in overtime to a Tennessee team that I think is much better than we thought they were going to be when we talked about them over the summer. They absolutely won the quarterback sweepstakes. I'll say that for a second week in a row. TJ, I know you watched a lot of this one. Is Mississippi State for real?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe it goes back to what I was saying in the last one, not to just steal from my last thought on, but I do think the parity is different. And I think that we've always talked about, the SEC being such a good conference and so deep. I mean, it's deeper now than ever. Not that I think Mississippi State can actually compete for the conference. I don't want to, but they are one of the teams that you do have to take seriously enough to know that, any given Saturday, they could potentially upset somebody, especially playing at home. Blake Shapen is certainly playing better than many people thought he would, and the team in general is playing better. I mean, you're looking, again, we're going transitive property, but Tennessee was a field goal away, right, from being undefeated and kind of maybe the team with the inside track to go to Atlanta. And Tennessee is this close to beating Georgia, and Mississippi State's this close to beating Tennessee. And I just think it's part of the parity of the league. Now, there are some teams in the conference, right, like that can't compete, right, and that are not going to, any given Saturday, upset somebody. But in Mississippi State, they absolutely could go. I mean, they play Texas A&M this weekend. There's no doubt that after watching the A&M Auburn game, that if Mississippi State can score like they did this weekend, that they could absolutely go into College Station and win. Now, it's certainly tougher playing on the road. And Tennessee, I'll say this about them. I mean, there should be a little concern around them as well. I mean, I don't know that you want Aguilar throwing the ball 40 times. I mean, they had to because of the situation of the game, and some things kind of broke right in their favor. But giving up 200 yards on the ground against Mississippi State, that's not really, that shouldn't be part of what Tennessee's doing. We remember how good their defensive front was last year. So I just think it's, again, going back to the parity thing, I think that Mississippi State is better than we expected. Tennessee, was it a little bit of a look ahead? Did they have a little bit of it's just Mississippi State? I mean, maybe. But yeah, this was a really fun game. It probably told us a little bit more about both teams, where Tennessee's not as infallible as maybe we thought, but found a way to get the win. And that's really all that matters on the road in conference.
Will, did you get to see any highlights on this one?
I saw a little bit. I saw the last, minute or so of regulation and then some of the overtime. I did think Tennessee managed the end of that game pretty poorly at the end of regulation, but yeah. I mean, Aguilar's stat line looked exactly kind of what I thought it would be. He threw for 300 plus, still had 2 picks. That's just what you're getting with him, especially when you throw it as much as TJ mentioned that they did. But I mean, Mike Matthews and Chris Brazel both breaking 100 yards that passing offense is legit. Fluff Bothwell from Mississippi State, we talked about the running game already. It was a great win for Tennessee to avoid going 0-2 in the SEC, because if you do that, all of a sudden, sure, you played Georgia close, and then you had to go on the road to a Mississippi State team who's better than we thought they were going to be. 0-2 in conference is 0-2 in conference. And I don't want to say it's a death sentence, but it's probably a death sentence to not be able to get to Atlanta, and your margin for error really goes away. So their back was kind of against the wall in this one, which sounds wild to say for Tennessee this early in the year, but it really was, and they were able to go get a win on the road. So I'm still pretty impressed with them. I actually forget, were there corners in this game? Did they play like McCoy and Gibson?
I would have to look that up. TJ's on it faster at that than I am.
I'm assuming that they didn't, because I think they were doubtful to questionable all week. But I mean,
they didn't register those guys back, so I doubt it.
Yeah, I mean, so they're still missing 2 of their best DBs, and they're still winning games on the road. That's impressive enough. And I think we have no problem saying that Tennessee is a legit playoff contender, especially when they're all the way healthy. So yeah, and I'm excited about Mississippi State, because it does feel like on any Saturday they could take down anybody and ruin their playoff hopes.
And that's such a fun position for them to be in. This is not a program that has a lot of winning in their past. I mean, Dan Mullen is their winningest coach prior to where they are at this moment. Dan had that team ranked number 1 for a very short period of time. He had them, I think they won 10 games 2 seasons in a row with him. So, I mean, not that they haven't seen any winning, but like they haven't seen a lot of winning in recent years. And I just think for them to be sitting now at 4-1, this is year 2 for their head coach, and so like that, that's a pretty impressive turnaround. I love when it happens quickly. That's supposed to be the joy of the NIL era, right? That you can turn things around incredibly quickly and start to win. I just think it's fun. I think it's neat to see. I think it's great for their fans. I love a team that can pull an upset at any given moment. This kind of reminds me of like Vandy in the early 2000s. Jay Cutler was their quarterback. Like any moment, they weren't great, right? They weren't going to represent the SEC East, but they were going to wreak some havoc in the conference, and that kind of feels like where Mississippi State is. And I think that's fun. And we'll talk a little while later about the Mississippi State Texas A&M game, but with the rest of their schedule, they have the ability to make some noise. I'm not going to say that they're, going to go to the SEC championship or make the playoffs or anything like that, but there's some winnable games left on their schedule.
Yeah, I mean, they play Texas A&M next. We'll talk about that in a minute. But then they go to the Swamp, and I do think that'll still be really tough. But, I mean, if they score over 28, then it won't be that tough.
14.
Texas, we'll see, right? Texas will have played in the Swamp and against Oklahoma by that point. I think we'll have a better idea on them, though there's a lot of questions. I mean, they should go win at Arkansas. Georgia will be really tough. Missouri will be tough. Ole Miss will be tough at the end of the year. But they could pick up 2 or 3 wins, in these next 4, and then maybe you win the rivalry game at the end, or maybe you beat Missouri because they fall off a little bit. I don't know. I still think 6-6 would be kind of a high watermark for them, but they could certainly pull an upset here or there. I mean, shoot, is that game against Florida? Is that after the bye? Like, is that after UF's bye? So like, who knows if they have an interim coach at that point or whatever. So I think
so.
It's right before the bye, before Georgia.
Right before the bye.
Okay, well, so they probably won't. Yeah, I would
like
imagine they won't have an interim coach there unless they go 0-2 in that stretch. But, yeah, I mean, there's winnable stuff here. There's also losable. I think they could lose every game on the schedule besides maybe Arkansas. But there's an opportunity here for Mississippi State to certainly be better than we thought.
Yeah, and that's always fun. This makes college football fun, where we have these Cinderella programs that perform higher than what our expectations were for them. Okay, so to recap that, Tennessee did beat Mississippi State in overtime, 41-34. It was a fun one. Another fun one. This was, I enjoyed Lane Kiffin's personality this week so much. Let's talk a little bit about LSU Ole Miss. Okay, so backstory to what I'm going to tell you. I know, TJ, you know this. Will, I know you know this, but Lane Kiffin's daughter, Landry, took this week to announce that she is dating Whit Weeks, the linebacker for LSU. There's actually 3 Weeks brothers that play for LSU currently, which, as someone that has a lot of brothers that all played football, I love that. I think that is so cool that they get to play together. Anyway, she took this week to go public on Instagram with Whit. They, I guess, met in Baton Rouge and they are dating. And there's been some hilarious jabs back and forth. Lane said to take the over. He made some funny comments in the post-game press conference about it. It's really been hysterical to watch. I think you can see why Florida fans want Lane Kiffin in orange and blue, because it's so Spurrier-esque, some of the things that he chooses to say. But man, this game was awesome. It was fun to watch. Again, another game with intensity on the sideline. But you know what I kept thinking about? Remember last week in the press conference when Brian Kelly, after the LSU game, Brian Kelly was asked about their inability to run the football. And he got really upset at the reporter that asked and essentially said, like, this is a team that just won. This is not a fair question. Why? Basically, like, enjoy the moment. Can't we just enjoy the win? Why do you have to harp on the negative? Something along those lines. And but I think we saw on Saturday why that was a legitimate question that maybe LSU needs to take a little bit more seriously.
Definitely. I mean, 2.8 yards per rush is never good. It's even worse when your quarterback is horrible. I mean, the Nussmeier sell in the preseason just could not have worked out better for us.
Yeah.
Could not have worked out better. And I don't know if it's this lower body injury he's been nursing all offseason, or I mean, you have so many good receivers. You have an offensive line that has enough talent. Like this offense, I thought it was just a slow start for him. I'm ready to say it's broken now. Like something is just wrong with LSU for them to not be able to perform with the talent profile that they have. I mean, Ole Miss had 12 more first downs than they did. They were 2 for 11 on third down was LSU. Got outgained by 230 just about. Like Ole Miss's defense is not good. It's fine, but especially like up front, that's not a good unit. And LSU not being able to break 20 on them, it's on the road. I don't care. You're supposed to be one of the best offenses in the country. Like this was pretty disappointing for a guy who was excited about LSU this year, relatively speaking. Like I thought they were going to win this game at least, and that offense just there's something wrong with it, and I don't know what the fix is. But for Ole Miss, I mean, just to give them credit, Trinidad Chambliss is awesome. 3 for 314, another score, carried the ball 71 yards. Kawan Lacey was great on the ground, 87 more yards and a touchdown. Like Ole Miss is really coming along now that Austin Simmons is not playing quarterback for him. So Rebels look really good, Tigers look really bad. Like I thought this was a very telling game, honestly, for both teams.
TJ, what did you think when you watched it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you want Nuss throwing the ball 50 plus times, and he wasn't very efficient in doing it. Had turnovers. They can't run the ball, so you've got to throw it that much. And going back to the first point you made about the way that he, answered that question, I get it. I get being defensive in a rival, after a rivalry game, after your team wins the game, and then the first thing you get is negativity. Sometimes you do have to win ugly games, and sometimes things don't work out as well as you want, and sometimes you don't perform as well as you thought you would, and all these things. So I understand the frustration in that. I don't even think Brian Kelly was necessarily wrong in getting defensive in that moment, because I do the same thing. Like if we had just gotten a big win and somebody asked me about it, I'd be like, dude, what the hell, man? Like we won the game. That's what you play to do, right? Like Herm Edwards. So, but the issues that have been apparent with LSU going back, and I think you could excuse them early, right? Oh, well, you played on the road in Clemson, South Carolina. Of course, it'd be tough to do it there. And then, oh, well, you played against a good Florida defense. And so, yeah, of course, it'd be tough to do it there. But then the more data points we get, we understand that this LSU offense is a problem. Now, I don't know. I mean, big picture for LSU going forward, that this is, they only have one loss, right? So you were able to escape the Florida game. You were able to escape the Clemson game. Those are good, because if you'd have lost either one of those, I'd say I'd probably sell you pretty hard for the playoff. And with how wide open the SEC is, there's no doubt that they could go 10-2, right? Does Alabama play like the Alabama of week 1, or do they play like the Alabama of week 5, right? Like that's, probably the biggest determining factor in that one. But they also have to play Oklahoma. And if Mateer's back for that one, that's a big one. They also have to play they have one other big one. I don't have their schedule up.
They got to go to Vandy.
Yeah, they got to go to Vandy, and so
we've decided this is a big game now.
Say what?
I said we've decided this is a big game now, Vandy.
I mean, with the way they're playing, we'll find out after Saturday. We'll talk about that game next. But I just think that you've got to. I mean, LSU may still very well be a playoff contender. I don't think they're anything close to a national championship contender, right? And that brings up a bigger conversation of the problem that I have with a billion teams in the playoff. But yeah, they'll still compete and probably be around for a potential playoff berth, but they don't look like a team that can win it all to me, and that's probably frustrating for LSU fans. And, they're kind of going to be in purgatory hell, because I don't think they fire him at like 9-3, even if they miss the playoff. So it's almost just like, well, are they ever going to figure it out? I was talking with somebody, Cole Thompson last night of SEC Unfiltered, and then he does a show with me on my channel too. But it used to be, hey, how many points is LSU going to have to score to win a game because their defense is so terrible? And now it has just completely flipped to where, man, if our defense doesn't hold them to like 17-21, we're not going to win this game because our offense just can't do enough. So I don't know. It's a weird situation for LSU, and they've got so much talent. But again, their offensive line play, not good enough. Running game, absolutely atrocious. It might be the worst in the SEC, which is crazy, because Nussmeier entered, you think about balance within an offense. I mean, he entered the season with the best Heisman odds. Like that was everybody's preseason Heisman pick. And so, but they are just so one-dimensional. Like their running game, I've never seen anything like it. Well, yeah, I did. I watched it last year with my team. But I can't believe how bad their running game is. And with all the talent they bring in they hired FSU's offensive coordinator, who was the offensive line coach last year, who had some success at Florida State, and they did some good things. They won 23 games in 2 years under him. They hired him as an analyst. So they bring all these guys in and they build up this big staff, not quite as big as the one in Gainesville, but they build up this big staff with all these guys from here and there and everywhere. And I don't know. I'm trying to rail on LSU so hard, but I guess that's what we're doing. I don't understand how their offense is this bad and so one-dimensional. And I think they've got a tough road the rest of the way. And, we'll see if they can kind of figure some stuff out. Their defense will keep them in stuff, and it did on Saturday. But on the other side, not to take your job and ask the questions, I think Ole Miss is legit enough. Like, I think if as long as they don't, drop a weird game somewhere, I think they look like a playoff team for sure.
Definitely, because they have a. Sorry, go ahead, Ellie.
No, you go ahead.
I was saying because they have a bye and then they get Washington State at home, so they're going to be 6-0 when they go to Athens.
Yeah,
and we just talked about how we think Georgia's defense might not be what it is. If Ole Miss can go in there and score 31, then they're 7-0. Go at Oklahoma. Is Mateer back 8-0? Like, this could line up pretty well for Ole Miss to really make a run. I'm pretty comfortable saying they beat Wazoo 6-0 going into Athens. But back-to-back Georgia and Oklahoma on the road, that's hard. But, to your point, Ole Miss says their schedule lines up pretty well where I would not be shocked at this point if they go win 10 games.
If they just win one of those. Sorry, Ali. Yeah. They just win one of those two.
On Lane has always been that he drops one that he shouldn't, though. And so that will be an interesting thing to watch. I think he will get his team up for the big games. That's almost not even as much a concern as the, sniping coming from the left or something that takes them out, because that's always been their Achilles heel in the past. This is a team that would have made the playoffs if not for Florida last year, right? They've won the games that they should win, but every once in a while they lose one of the ones that they shouldn't. And so have they cleared that hurdle? Have they evolved past that? Will be the interesting thing, I think, to watch. But it was a fun game. And the LSU thing, I think why it's so frustrating to their fans. And if you check out social media, you'll see there's so many people calling for Brian Kelly to lose his job at the moment. And I think the frustrating thing is that he for sure won't. You are talking about a team that's going to go 9-3 or 10-2. And whether or not you make the playoffs, you're still not firing that coach no matter what, right? And so LSU fans are stuck in this little moment where they're kind of like, okay, he's showing us who he is. Is this who we are? And then you've got a Mark Richt at Georgia situation, right? Where it's like, are you going to go a decade of winning 10 games before you're willing to say 10 games isn't enough? But I don't think in year 4, if you win 10 games, it's a fireable offense.
What's so interesting too, I would love to hear your take on this, Will. With this transfer portal era, I think it's so easy to complete. Now, it's nothing like the FSU season last year, but it's similar to me. Like, when you're so portal reliant, you can have these big swings and you can have these misevaluations of talent, and there's really nothing you can do about it. When it was just all your high school kids that you were developing up for 3 and 4 years, you kind of knew what you had. And LSU was really high on their ability to block this year, on their ability to run the ball this year. They thought that would be a very good balance for their team on both sides of that. Obviously, they hit on defense, and it looks like they picked up some really good guys on defense. But with the way that we portal now, and when teams are really relying on the portal, I think you're going to have these big sweeping. Now, again, I don't think they're going to lose 6 more games or anything like that. But you have a much bigger opportunity to just misevaluate and misunderstand what you are going to be from year to year. And it's a much smaller scale than what happened with Florida State last year, but it's the same thing. They completely misevaluated what their running game and what their offensive line would be this year.
Definitely, yeah. It can absolutely be a crapshoot. Just like you can bring in the most talented guys in the world, but let's just say it's a quarterback and a receiver. If your quarterback doesn't know when that elite receiver is cutting inside, he's going to throw a pick. Like, it's not even just talent always. Are these guys going to sync well together? Can they actually be true teammates? Because, FSU, didn't lose a game, couldn't win a game a year after. Like, that's just how the portal is going to act. And, yeah, for LSU defensively, it worked, but it seems like what they've done on offense, mainly along that front, it just hasn't clicked because it's impossible to go 100% on the portal. It just is. And if you're going to be super reliant on that, you're going to be guessing. You're going to always have questions. And will you strike gold sometimes? Sure. But more often than not, you're just going to have probably a B- product overall. And that's I think what we got from LSU this year.
B- is not a fireable offense, though. So. Hence the ire from LSU fans, particularly if they have been hitting in the moonshine before they go on X. All right, let's pivot for a minute. We are going to preview some upcoming games, but I want to talk about some news that broke yesterday. Sam Pittman was fired from Arkansas. I've heard that this happens when your team doesn't win enough football games.
I didn't know you could fire people during the season, actually.
I didn't either. I mean, you learn something new every single day. The ironic thing is that Sam Pittman might have been fired 2 years ago had Florida not bumbled a Mayday field goal at the absolute last second that relatedly almost got my husband ejected from the swamp.
It speaks to Billy Napier's character, honestly, if
really
more than anything else.
Such a loving guy.
Sam Pittman will end up as our offensive line coach next year in Florida. Okay. Anyway, Arkansas, let's Pittman go. It's kind of interesting that they chose now to me because I do feel like in their losses they actually were like right there. I mean, it's got to be hard to recruit to Arkansas. It's a hard conference to play in. I don't know what they view as their standard. But Sam Pittman is out. Clearly, he is not the standard, not good enough for them. Was it the right time to make this move? I find it interesting this early for Arkansas.
Yeah, I don't totally know. I mean, obviously Arkansas wasn't, super impressive on the field under Pittman, but like if you watch that documentary this offseason, like he was clearly loved in that building. And he got them wins, like they beat Tennessee last year. They had a decent start to this year before these past 2 weeks have kind of gone off the rails. But I mean, he wasn't like there was tension in the building. And like you said, I don't know what Arkansas standard is supposed to be. Like, do they expect to be going 9-3 and competing in the SEC in the playoff every year? But part of me thinks that Pittinger was just kind of like sitting back in his chair, just like this, waiting for this to happen over the last 2 games. He's got the interim.
Right.
But I like Pittman a lot. I do think he should definitely land somewhere with an O-line job. It's probably a bit of a weird time, right? Because they have the playmakers on that offense with Taylor Green, Mike Washington, to really put up points. And defensively, you got guys like Xavier Story, Jaheim Singletary. Like, he's put together a decent enough roster where, kind of like with Mississippi State, they can go out and compete any given Saturday. Now, I don't know what happened this Saturday because that was horrible. But, I mean, this Arkansas team I didn't think really was that bad. I thought they were decent.
Yeah.
So I was probably a little surprised to see him get fired now. I would not have been surprised if they lost, 3 of their next 4 and they did it. But I was probably a little bit surprised with how early this happened, even though we did kind of have rumblings of this over the past 2 years.
TJ, do you think that the reason it happened now or one of the contributing factors could have been that they do have Pittinger on staff? So here's another person that is a major D1 head coach with lots of experience who could maybe take this roster that is talented, I'll put the asterisk, at least for Arkansas standards, and maybe see if he has any better luck. Like, if you had a different coaching staff, would you maybe have rethought and decided to wait, particularly with the fact that Sam Pittman is loved in this building, but you felt more comfortable pulling the trigger that you were going to eventually pull anyway, because you have someone that you feel comfortable stepping in?
I mean, I guess, but that same scenario would have applied in a couple of weeks. Like if you let him wear a couple more losses, and then, Pittinger would have still been there. So I don't know. I just think it had more to do with like probably booster pressure. Like that's probably what it comes down to. Just kind of like the idea of, what Spurrier used to say: if it's going to be done eventually, just do it immediately, which certainly probably frustrates Florida fans. But I mean, I just think that you're trying to, at the end of the day, what the season is going to be, especially with 3 of their next 4 being against pretty good teams. Mm-hmm. I think you're kind of looking at it and saying like, all right, we've got to get some excitement and let the fan base know that we hear their cries, and we let the boosters and donors know, that we're going to make a change and also relax expectation. Not that there were crazy expectations, but we're going to relax expectations for the rest of the year, right? We're going to get them off our back for the rest of the year because we know we're going to lose most of the games on the schedule, if not all of them. And so let's get everybody off our back. Let's see if a different voice kind of motivates people to play up one more time and get kind of a fun win here or there. And, if we're going to do it later, might as well just do it now and move on. So I don't know. But again, if they'd have waited till the end of the year, it wouldn't have mattered. And to me, the timing of when it happens, and maybe this frustrates Florida fans, the timing of when it happens doesn't I don't know that it really makes that big of a difference, right? You're going to lose the games you're going to lose this year, and you're going to win the games you're going to win this year. Like firing Napier isn't going to all of a sudden like now you have Russ Callaway calling plays. Maybe that's better. I don't know. Maybe it's worse. You never know what's on the other side of things. But for Arkansas, it's kind of the same thing to me. You're probably going to lose all the games you're going to lose, and just kind of gets people off the administration's back, because now what can they complain about? Like if you're a donor or you're a booster, like it's like, all right, let's get through the end of the year and let's see what kind of hire they make. So to me, that's probably what it had more to do with.
I do actually wonder also, not to like try and do a conspiracy or anything, but like, did they wait 5 games on purpose so that guys couldn't redshirt and hit the portal?
1,000%
window? Like,
yes.
Because if you fire a coach in September, like odds are you're gonna do it. Like you were always gonna get it done. So waiting this 5th game, now Talon Green is less likely to just quit. All your guys are just less likely to quit, and then you can either maybe stick with Petrino or get a new guy in. Like there's definitely that sort of gamesmanship, I think, from the administration where this is our best shot at keeping this team together, is to effectively just trap them in the rest of this season. Like you can transfer if you want to, but you're going to lose this year.
That would normally bother me, but when we're paying these players to be here, I feel like it's a slightly different scenario. But that 1,000% has happened, and I will always maintain that anybody you fire in September, you should have fired in December.
Maybe that's what Florida's doing too.
The other thing too, and not to get the one thing I will say, I don't not to be a contrarian, but just to kind of like bring up a data point, we have not seen like a massive portal exodus from UCLA or Virginia Tech, who did this even earlier. There have been some guys, there's no doubt, but like this idea, and I don't think we would see it from other teams too. Now we're past the point of that, so it doesn't matter. But guys could still opt out or whatever, or say, hey, I'm planning on doing this at this point or that point or whatever. But I do think that I expected to see more of that from Virginia Tech and UCLA, and we really didn't see that much either. I also will say this: if they'd have lost to Notre Dame by 7, I don't think they'd do this, right? I think the way they lost and just getting absolutely demolished by Notre Dame's got 2 good losses. I get it, but by a 1-2 team on the road in the SEC, like I think that if this would have been a 7-point game, they would have absolutely been fine. He would have been here for another week, and then it would have happened in a few weeks. But the way the score happened certainly played an impact too.
All right. Well, let's pivot to our previews. We're going to talk about a couple different games. First and foremost is the game that over the summer we picked to be the marquee game of this upcoming weekend. We thought it was going to be a revival in Gainesville. There was going to be game day. It was going to be the top 2 quarterbacks in college football head to head. We were going to get to see the DJ Arch show. We're still getting to see the DJ Arch show. It just is at the Dollar Theater down the street instead of, on Broadway or something, which is how we were thinking it was going to be when we were looking at this game in July. Florida didn't uphold their end of the bargain. And even though Texas hasn't looked great, Arch hasn't been really probably even good, their record was good enough for game day to be here and for it to be a marquee game. Florida's is not. It was truly Florida that didn't uphold their end of the bargain in this game. This is the first time Texas has been to the Swamp in a very, very long time. These are 2 young, talented quarterbacks who a lot of pundits put a lot of faith in leading into this season. Interestingly enough, I'm not going to sit here and say that this is a winnable game for Florida, but this looks like a more winnable game for Florida than some of the ones that they have down the line. And I think when we looked at this over the summer, we circled it as like, okay, well, obviously they lose to Texas, but there's still a path to the playoffs by doing X, Y, and Z. And I don't know that I feel that way anymore. I don't think this Texas team is nearly as good as we expected that they would be. And there's a whole lot of teams coming down the pipeline that are actually better than we expected them to be. So I still think there's some intrigue in this game, but it's definitely completely different than we thought it was going to be 5 short weeks ago.
Definitely. And I mean, my biggest question to this, like not to question the character of anybody in that building, but I really wonder if Florida's defense comes out and fights again. Because at what point do you just get tired of being the only thing that's working, knowing that you have to hold a team to 10, especially at home? Like, I mean, there will be 11 guys out there for Florida who line up, put their helmets on and play each snap. But do we really get another effort from them like we have in the past. Because Arch finally looked good in their last game against Sam Houston. And he played with some fire. I know that him standing over that Sam Houston guy was a bit controversial. I kind of liked it. I liked that we got emotion from him because he seemed like it was a confidence problem for him at that point. And he's kind of getting that going now. I mean, I just don't think many points get scored in this game at all, especially by Florida. We got two great defenses. We know that Texas is going to show up because they're still, I mean, they're playing for everything right now. It does seem like Lagway being in a boot is a total nothing burger. So that's a positive. And I'm pretty comfortable saying that Florida, I'm not sure they just break 14 in this game. So it'll be slow. I think you'll get a Texas game plan like we've seen from LSU and Miami, where they're just kind of like, if we just don't make a mistake, we'll be fine. But yeah, I'm going to be at this game, and it was a lot more exciting in July to think about being there. But I'll still be there. I'll still make some noise, but we'll see. We'll see how much I have to cheer about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still going to go to this game. I'm a glutton for punishment as well. I will be in my orange and blue. I'm excited for this, but Will, you're right. It's an incredibly difficult ask to ask your defense to be willing to carry the day yet again. I mean, at this point, we're literally like, okay, so if you guys could figure out a scoop and score while you're at it too, that would really help us out. And I mean, you can't rely on your defense to do everything. This offense has weapons. They do. I mean, they do. They on paper have a very talented offensive line who have way underperformed, but the talent level is there. We have a returning All-American in Jake Slaughter. We have Austin Barber, who preseason was projected to be All SEC. 4 of these 5 guys are returning, and they're the same guys that played well the last 6 games of the season last year. DJ Lagway didn't just forget all of the things he knows about football. The talent level is there. I won't even get into the amount of wide receivers that Florida has. If we could throw to them instead of a tight end, like what could be? I refuse to believe Florida's actually this bad. I feel like there has to be things that are fixable about it. There's no way you have this much talent and you can't figure it out. Is this the week that they figure it out? I mean, after the bye last year, they came out better, right? They did put together some games the second half of the season. Are we going to see that? And is this Napier's last stand?
What I think is interesting is that, I mean, Texas got one too, so it's not like some kind of massive advantage there, but I think Florida has more issues than Texas, and so they probably needed it more. How much could you get done in that 2 weeks? Because what we said after the LSU game was, man, is 6 days really enough? And then one of those is a travel day. Is 6 days really enough to get things fixed for UF going down to Miami? No, we all knew it wasn't, and they came out and looked like dog crap against Miami minus that one drive. But is 13 days enough? Right? Is that a little bit more time to where they really can work out some of those kinks? Lagway with, whatever the boot he was wearing, and then the other 74 injuries that he's had. Can he be as healthy as possible coming into this game? Can the offensive line be coached well enough over these next 2 weeks to take on a really good defensive line from Texas? You're also playing in the swamp, and you also you ask about the defense and just their ability to continue to get up. I think coming off of a bye week is probably a really good time. I wouldn't worry so much about the defense quitting or not having great effort or whatever this week. Now, if they lose this game, then I think I would worry about that going to College Station. But I do think all of the things, I mean, I'm going to pick Texas in this game. There's no doubt until I see something different from UF. But I think all of the reasons that you would maybe start to have some optimism, not for the season, but for this specific game, they all exist for Florida. Texas has not done anything to me this year that makes them impressive or worrisome. Whereas you look at that game against Miami that Florida did keep relatively close until very late. They held them down, and they did a pretty good job against a team that has been very impressive. I would still vote Miami number 1 in the country if I had an AP vote. And so I think when you think about all of the factors into this game, you think, yeah, this game could be right there for the taking or right there for Florida to keep it very, very competitive until late, and then we'll see kind of what happens. The opposite of that exists too. We've seen Florida put awful performances back to back to back on film. And so, yeah, there is the chance that, man, we just said all those things could click for Florida. All those things could click for Texas. They got the same amount of time off. Arch could come out and look a lot better than he has. Their defense could continue to play pretty out of their minds, which they've done all year. So with all of the optimism that I just built up for Florida, all that same stuff could exist for Texas, and this game could get ugly. I don't think it will. I think this will continue to be really close. Maybe Texas pulls away late. Maybe Florida finds a way to keep it really close late. But I do think that both teams will play. I don't know. Maybe it's the eternal optimist in me. I think both teams will actually play pretty well in this game, or better than we've seen, because they've had more time to prepare. But when you're thinking about just what you've seen so far, yeah, there's no doubt that I would take Texas in this one.
The spread right now, I believe, is 7, which that's not a huge spread. These are two different, evenly matched teams. You give 3 points for home field advantage. So they're saying Texas is a tick better, and I think that's talent related more than anything else. Texas does have a slightly more talented roster than Florida does. They've recruited better, but this is such an interesting matchup to watch. Honestly, I do think Florida has the ability to put the pieces together. Now, will they? I don't know, and I'm not saying that I'm sitting here to predict that. But let's say Florida beats Texas in a close one. Then what? Where are Florida? I mean, I'm the Florida fan that's going to
extend Napier.
No matter what.
We extend Napier is what we do.
But that's an interesting, where's the mindset the next week of the fan base, I guess, is my point. I'm the type of fan that I will never root for my team to lose to get the long-term outcome that I want. I can't bring myself to do that. You can label me a Disney Gator or whatever else, but I will never sit there and root for my team to lose for some greater good. But I know that there are plenty of fans like that. And, you fan how you fan. That's on you. But what is that? Let's say Florida beats Texas. Then what?
Well, I mean, Allie, when I was on your show in the preseason, you asked me what I thought the most important game was, or the swing game. I said A&M. And if Florida wins this game, that all of a sudden somehow finds a way to still be true. Because if you win both of these games, all of a sudden, okay, now we'd be 3-3, which is not good, but we looked competent. We can start beating good teams. But I'm almost worried about that. Hindsight now, winning the LSU and Ole Miss games last year seemed to be an overall bad thing for this program, because then you got confidence in how it currently lines up with the administration, with these players, and it seems like it's not working out. So could you fall into that same trap where you win, obviously this is dreamland, but you win both of these games against the Texas schools, then maybe you end 7-5, but then Napier is able to go to Strickland and say, I beat Texas, got us to a bowl game, won our bowl game. And then all of a sudden you're just in a Groundhog Day situation where you can't get out of the same loop. So,
and I do think that that's what Florida is. I think Coach Napier has shown Florida what he is. I think that any team coached by Billy Napier at the University of Florida is going to be a roller coaster. They will win some games that they shouldn't. They also will never consistently win every game that they should. I mean, this is a team that in 4 years has never managed to start 2-0. This is a team that has managed to lose games against all of our rivals, but also all of the teams that we consider gimmies every single season. So while there have been some highs, and I do think beating Ole Miss last year and LSU, we kept both those teams out of the playoffs. That was huge, but I agree with you that those wins are what kept us, watching the same movie season after season. So you don't have a whole lot of hope that even if the season finishes similar to last year, that this administration will be like, we want to get off the ride. They're going to say, we kind of like this ride. This is a fine ride. We'll stay on.
I'm a little worried they're going to stay on, but you have to be willing to learn from your mistakes. And Napier has shown you, what you just said. I don't want to repeat you, but you'll win some good games, but it's not going to be to the expectation level of the school. So you have to be willing to, just take your medicine and get rid of this guy and find somebody whose ceiling is higher, because it seems like Napier's ceiling is 8-4, right? I mean, especially if he's still calling plays, his ceiling, I think, is well defined. So even if he does give you some hope, you kind of have to be willing to take a step back and realize, this guy didn't work out. Take accountability if you are the athletic department and just make a change.
I do wonder if there's even, so I would worry, UF fans are kind of freaked out about this, the potential of keeping him. I don't think, even if they won these 2 games, you would look at the rest of the schedule and say they could win. I think he needs to win out to keep his job. And I know, Allie, you were told kind of in the offseason, he needs to get to 8 wins. I still don't even know if that would be enough, because of the way that they lost early. Now, I will say, if the bye week completely refocuses them and they're able to go on this streak of winning out, if they win out, I still think they're going to the playoff at this point. because 9-3 in the SEC and winning what that would be 7 games in a row. I mean, I think that'd be really strong, and they'd be in a really good spot. And we know that losses early in the year just don't matter as much, especially if one of those losses was to the SEC or the ACC champion in Miami or LSU, who may make the playoff or whatever. So I do think that, but I don't think that's realistic. So I think Florida fans' worry of him maybe coming back, like, just way too much would have to go right. And even if they were to somehow win these 2 games, which I don't think they will, but I don't think they're going to go beat Georgia. I don't think they're going to go into the Grove and beat Ole Miss. Obviously, Tennessee and Florida State look way better than we thought. Shoot, Mississippi State looks better than we thought. So I think the worry around that is, like, they're going to lose enough games to where he's not going to make it. And even if they turn it around and make a bowl or win 7 games, it's not going to be enough, in my opinion. And we'll probably find out at like 7:00 on Saturday that all of those fears are unrealized, and like Texas will have won. And so I don't know. I'd be stunned if first of all, if they brought him back in general, but second of all, if they did enough on the field to do it. I think that's kind of an unrealistic fear of Florida fans.
Well, we all have some PTSD, so you're going to have to leave us to our unrealistic fears.
I'm trying to provide you some hope. He's out, man. Like, there's no way he makes it.
The moment. I did see a stat the other day that Florida has, I want to say it's a 1.2% chance of winning the rest of their football games. So
you're telling me
chip in a chair, as they say, but very, very small percentage. Okay, but let's turn our attention back to this game. TJ, if Florida beats Texas, you're not allowed to say everything. What went right?
I mean, Lagway outplayed Arch, to me, is the biggest thing, right? And that's going to be tough to do. As much respect as I have for Florida's defense and as good as I think they are, I mean, Texas is really good too. And so, the simplest thing to me is that Lagway plays a little bit better than Arch. As bad as Arch has been, I mean, Lagway's been a lot worse. And so, that's the simplest thing to me. I think quarterback is it's the most important position in any sport, that we watch. And so that has to go Florida's way. And if he does, I have enough confidence in the running game. I have enough confidence in the wide receivers. My confidence in the offensive line is less than it was in the offseason, but I certainly have confidence in the defense. And if Lagway outplays Arch, then they'll probably win the game.
All right. Well, what is a marquee matchup? And I'm not talking about offense versus offense, but let's say, Arch versus Florida's front seven or whatever else. What is the marquee matchup for you that you think determines the outcome of this game?
I think it's probably Texas's front seven versus Florida's blockers. I mean, Anthony Hill and Colin Simmons are just absolute monsters. And we've seen Florida's offensive front really struggle. I mean, I think that you can compare Miami and Texas's fronts pretty well. And we saw Miami really do a lot of good stuff against Florida's front. So I think that I think the Gators are going to have a pretty hard time blocking those guys. I mean, Colin Simmons is so good, and Florida's tackles haven't necessarily looked awesome. So I'm pretty worried about that matchup for Florida. Texas's front seven is going to be really the telltale sign of this game. I think if they're able to block him, Florida is, then all of a sudden maybe you've got some life if Lagway's able to hit a few deep passes. But we just haven't seen that happen yet, and I don't think that Texas is the team where we're going to see that happen for the first time.
All right, the line is currently Texas by 7. The over-under is 45.5. TJ, give me your score prediction.
Yeah, I think Texas wins 24-13. I think their defense really limits UF, and unless UF just figured a lot of things out in the bye week, I don't know that I see them scoring a ton. I think this is low scoring. I mean, that over-under would imply it. I think it hits the under, and so, 24-13 Texas.
You're close to mine. Will, what do you got?
He's close to mine too. I had 27-13 Texas. I think it plays out pretty similarly to the Miami game, where it's kind of close and Miami is able to just tack one more on at the end.
All right. Well, I wrote down 24-17. I guess have faith in our defense to come through with a few more points maybe than you guys do. But I think the under hits. I would be shocked if more. Florida's defense is good, and I don't think Texas's offense is lights out by any means. I think it will be 24 points might be difficult for them to come through. That may be some of Texas's defense scoring for them as well. But I can't see a scenario where the over hits in this. Would love to be wrong on that, but I think we're all in agreement that Texas wins this. But fingers crossed, maybe we'll be wrong.
We all took Georgia last week, so we'll see.
That's true. That is true. Okay, so another game that is pretty exciting. We would not have predicted that we would be hyping this game up, that game day would be going there, but Alabama Vandy has become the marquee game in a weekend that has Florida, Texas, and Florida State, Miami. So wild stuff. Vandy is undefeated. Clark Lee has those boys rolling. Alabama, not undefeated, obviously, but coming off of that victory against Georgia. They had their one slip up against Florida State, game 1 of the season. This is in Tuscaloosa, which makes the choice for game day even more interesting for me. If this game was in Nashville, I think I can understand why you go there. It doesn't happen that often, to have the opportunity for a 5-0 Vandy team to play at home. But it's not. It's in Tuscaloosa, which kind of tells you what they think of this Florida State, Miami, and Florida, Texas game, I guess, by this pick. But it's not a trap game. Everybody knows that Vanderbilt's coming, that Vanderbilt is 5-0. This is right now, Alabama's favored by 13.5, which feels slightly disrespectful for a game day game. But what do you think, Will? Does Vanderbilt have a chance against the Tide?
Yeah, I think they do. I mean, because Vandy's coming off a cup game at home and Bama had to go to Athens. So that's a very different level of recovery as you get ready for your next week. Vandy on offense, their success rates are very good and Bama's are just fine. Now, if Vandy has had games in Tallahassee and in Athens, I'm sure they'd be a little more closer to each other. But I do think at this point we have enough data points where you can take those numbers pretty seriously and look at those teams, what they are. Vandy's got very good rushing stats on both sides of the ball. Bama's are just average. It feels like Vandy does really have metrically a decent edge over Bama. Both teams score well on points per opportunity when they cross that 40, so I do think we'll get a lot of touchdowns instead of field goals in this game. I mean, I could not be more on board the Diego Pavia Clark Lee train. I mean, these guys are just winners. They're just I mean, they walk in everywhere pissed off. Everybody's always doubting them, at least in their minds, and it's gotten them some big wins. And it's crazy to say that we got game day going to see Vandy on the road for 2 straight against Bama as an undefeated top 20 team, but I mean, that's where they are, and we have to really respect them now as a legitimate SEC program. And I mean, this team is good. This team is really actually a legit player, and I think that Vandy's got more than a chance in this one.
TJ, if Vanderbilt wins, what matchup mattered the most?
Yeah, it's Bama's front against Vandy's rushing attack. With Pavia included, can they continue to get up for that? Because Vandy ran all over them last year. Bama made mistakes, and Vandy did a good job of capitalizing on them. The one thing I think that's really good for Alabama is, no Alabama fan would agree with this, but in the context of just this season, I mean, it's good they lost to them last year because they will absolutely take this seriously. Vandy is not sneaking up on anybody this year and certainly not sneaking up on Alabama. If I had told you that Alabama fans were going to circle in crimson red, the Vandy game on the first weekend of October, you'd have probably said, you're crazy. But they did. And they will absolutely take this seriously. They will remember what happened last year. And I think that's really good for Alabama. Now, at the same time, just being motivated for a game doesn't really matter that much. And do you have any kind of a drop-off or letdown after last week? Because I know that Vandy will be motivated for this game. And they want to continue to play with that chip on their shoulder that, hey, nobody believes in us. Hey, we're ranked too low. I mean, they're ranked. I believe they're ranked behind Florida State, who just took a loss. I mean, it's one spot. So, rankings in October don't matter that much. But I think Vandy will continue to play with that chip on their shoulder. And if Alabama doesn't come out as razor sharp as they were against Georgia, they will lose, right? They will lose this game at home. And then all the, questions that we had about them after week 1 will be back. And so, I mean, I like this matchup for Alabama. I like the way that Simpson has been playing. Really, I mean, even in that Florida State game, I don't think Simpson was the problem. So no. I really like that, he has been really sharp this year. They've gotten what they've needed to out of him. Can Bama run the ball a little bit better? I still think that that's a big question mark. You would think that they would be able to against Vandy a little bit more than they did against Georgia, but I mean, shoot, we thought they'd run the ball better against Florida State too. So I guess we'll see. But I like this matchup for Bama, but they have to take it seriously. And I think they will, right? Because of what happened last year.
Okay, so what, like I said, the line is 13.5. How does Clark Lee present that to the locker room, Will? How do you galvanize your team? This is, I mean, I understand that Vanderbilt is 5-0, but it still feels a little bit like a David and Goliath matchup. Mm-hmm. If you're coaching this week, how do you sell this in the locker room?
I mean, in that documentary over the summer we saw, he just goes into that meeting room and screams at them until he blacks out. And it seems like that's really what gets him going.
Does
Like
he want to
the
come to
yeah, the energy that he brings is incredible. And that clearly really resonates with his team. I mean, you're totally right with the chip on their shoulder. Like, you can be ranked all you want. If you're a 2-touchdown underdog, that is disrespectful. And it's even more so when you are a top 20 team who hasn't lost. Because then you feel like we've proven that we can do this. You're ranking us. Why don't you think that we can go on the road and win this game? We beat this team last year. And I mean, looking at the stats from last year, I just pulled them up for fun. I mean, Vandy had the ball for 42 minutes.
Yeah.
And they were 12-18 on third down. Like, they dominated them last year. They really did. And TJ talked about the rushing attack. Their leading rusher last year for Bama was Jam Miller. He only had 45 yards. So do we think that – I think Vandy's better than last year now. Do we think that Alabama has taken a big step forward where those matchups totally flip? And I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I think in terms of getting this Vandy team up for this game, I don't think Lee's going to have a hard time with that. This is what this team is built on, is getting fired up for everything as if they're the underdog, and it's been working out for him so far.
TJ, you mentioned that DeBoer does a great job getting his team up for the big games. And so, I mean, maybe that's why they did lose to Vanderbilt last year, because he didn't label that as a big game. And the odds are that doesn't happen again this year. As you said, it's circled in red. But if you're DeBoer, you just came off of an incredibly emotional, physical win against a Georgia team, a team that, you know, if there was one game you were going to pick all season that you really felt like you needed to come out victorious, it might have been that one. How do you avoid the letdown against, a team that you know they're coming?
I think being at home helps a lot. They've been really good in Tuscaloosa, and they were last year, even with all their warts. They were really good against Georgia, and then they played well in that stadium. So I think that helps the most. I think that DeBoer is a good motivator, though, and I think that they will be up for this. I think you can sell building on the way that they played last week and say, listen, I don't know what the real – I mean, we were so early into the season, I guess a quarter of the way done for most teams, but I do think you can sell to your own team, hey, boys, week one was a fluke. And whether it was or not, we'll find out way more about all of these teams. But I think that's the message you sell to your team. Hey, week one is not the way we thought it would go down. Week one is not the way that this team is capable of playing. The last 3 weeks are. And that's what you sell. Hey, guys, this is the same opponent. We're getting another ranked team coming into your house. Go build on what last week was. And so I do have a lot of confidence in DeBoer that they will do that. And I do think the spread's a little high. But, I mean, there's no doubt that if Alabama plays as sharp as they did against Georgia, they could easily win this game by 2 touchdowns. And that's no shot at Vandy at all.
All right, Will, give me your score prediction.
I'm going for it. I got Vandy 31-28. I think this team has totally turned a corner. And I feel like if being in Nashville, I feel like I kind of have to. I gotta respect the hometown guys, the local guys here. I'm pretty annoyed this is at the same time as the Florida game, because I will just have to hope the stadium Wi-Fi is working for me. But I got Vandy winning this game. I think, if nothing else, just for vibes. I think, but this team is they're so good at they're so good at punching up, and we've seen that for the past 2 years. I really do think this is a legitimate program for Vanderbilt. I mean, if they win this game and they go 6-0, then you get a bye, then you get LSU and Missouri at home, at Texas. Like, if you win this game, I think 10 wins is on the plate for Vanderbilt. Now, at this point, maybe I'm going insane, but I do like Vandy to at least compete in the spot, and I think that with the mentality and toughness that they have, I think they can go in there and get it done.
All right, TJ, what you got?
I'm going to roll with Alabama here, but I really wish I had the guts that Will did to pick Vandy. I'll say Alabama wins this. It's a close game that they get a score late to kind of put it away, 31-20. I just think, Alabama looked really impressive last week, and if they replicate that at all, then I don't know that Vandy will have enough, but I hope I'm wrong, and I hope Pavia goes off.
So I wrote – I think I essentially really wanted to pick Vandy and couldn't. I wrote 31-30 Alabama.
Ooh.
So that was my way of, I do think that this game is closer than Vegas thinks that it's going to be. I like Clarkley. I like Pavia. I think this is a cool story. I want this to be this year, but I was really impressed with what I saw about Alabama. So this is a total cop-out, because 31-30, everybody wins. That would be a moral victory for Vanderbilt, even though I don't believe in those. So that's where we are. There's so much good football on Saturday at exactly the same time. this game, at least I can watch Florida State, Miami as I drive home from whatever Gainesville is going to present to me. Hopefully it's a win. I doubt that it is, but that would be a really fun way. And then I'll be rooting for the asteroid in the Miami Florida State game. But okay, so we've got one more game left to preview. But before we do, I want to make sure if you are watching this, you are subscribed to A Peek Inside SEC Football. We go live every Monday at 10 a.m. We preview the biggest games for the upcoming week. We recap the biggest games from the previous week. We take a lot of shots at our own teams because that's fun and they're not that good right now. So make sure you are subscribed. And then you can see down at the bottom all of our individual X handles. If you want to argue with us on social media, we are totally down. You can see it right there at the bottom of your screen. Okay, the last one we're going to go over, Texas A&M and Mississippi State. This is, I think, an interesting matchup. We talked a lot about Mississippi State earlier in this episode. They almost got it done against Tennessee. They are playing much better than we expected them to be able to. They're holding their own. They're sitting there at 4-1 with that one loss in overtime. What does a win against Texas A&M do for this Mississippi State program?
It shows that the first 4 weeks weren't a fluke, because I had them winning 3 games this season over the summer. They've already beaten me on that. And so then you open up with your first conference game, you lose a heartbreaker at home. Then if you go on the road and the line's 11.5, let's say they lose this game by 14, all of a sudden those thoughts start to creep in, maybe not in the locker room, but amongst the fans and the media, like, I think this might still be Mississippi State. But if you're able to go out there and win, you really show like this, we've turned this around already. We're a legitimate threat in this conference. And I will say for this game, I am kind of sold on A&M being a contender in the SEC this year, but that has more to do so with the parity in the league rather than me thinking that the Aggies are some elite squad. And State can really sling the ball around. And A&M's defense, with the game against Auburn aside, they're vulnerable to that. They look pretty vulnerable to downfield passing. So Mississippi State definitely has a good shot in this game. I think they match up pretty well in certain spots on both sides. And winning this game, it prevents anybody from saying this is still a Mississippi State that we're used to seeing.
TJ, this is another game that'll be head-to-head with your Florida State-Miami game. The line on this is 13.5, and the over-under is 58.5 points. So they're obviously expecting some heavy scoring. If Texas A&M were to win, what went right for them?
I mean, they're more talented, so they didn't make the mistakes that Tennessee made. Joey had a couple of turnovers. They were not as sharp as I think they should have been, but you're playing at home and you're the more talented team. You're also playing a team in Mississippi State that came off of a really emotional loss where it felt like they had a real chance to go out and win the game and they just couldn't get it done. But a team that is more talented than any of us thought. I do think, A&M just needs to take care of the ball. They need to be a little better offensively than they were against Auburn. 16 points isn't enough against an Auburn defense that really, I'm not overly impressed with, and an Auburn team that just isn't that good. But I do think that, just what went right for A&M, they just took care of the ball and they made the plays that they needed to, and they played at home and they didn't do too much. And that should be enough in this game, not to discredit Mississippi State completely. But you're playing a team, again, that came off of a very emotional loss. You just need to go out and play your game and you should be fine in this one. There's a reason they're a 13.5 point favorite. And there's a reason they're number 5 or 6 in the country. They're a good team. I don't think they're super elite. I don't think they're a national title contender or anything like that. But I do like the matchup here for A&M.
Okay, so A&M beat Auburn 16-10. TJ alluded to that last week. Where do you compare Auburn's defense and Mississippi State's defense? Obviously, we saw a lot of points given up to Tennessee, but they were also able to score a lot of points against Tennessee. And if you're A&M, you are kind of concerned about only having been able to score 16 against Auburn.
I don't think they're overly dissimilar. Auburn definitely has the more blue chip players, but I don't love Auburn's secondary as a whole. So I wouldn't say that that the DBs are that big of a matchup. I do think Auburn has a better front seven, but Auburn seemed to have given State the blueprint for how you can stop this A&M offense, which like Notre Dame couldn't figure out. Nobody else could really figure out, but A&M now has tape of when they struggle. And Marcel Reed, I think he's been playing good. He hasn't been very accurate. His completion rate is not great. Like against Notre Dame, I think he was right around 50%. I forget what he was against Auburn, but like for State defensively, if they can make Reed uncomfortable, he will throw the ball away, whether that's just to out of bounds to the ground or to one of your corners. So I do think they have a decent shot defensively because we don't love Auburn's defense, even though it is a little more talented. Like it wasn't like some top 5 unit that went in there and held A&M down. It was an average defense. So it does seem like anybody can really do that if they're able to get to Reed.
All right, well, where do you think this one ends up?
I think it's a pretty similar story as the game that State just played against Tennessee, where they're able to hang around a little bit. But now that on being on the road, especially, I just don't know if they're where they're at, where they need to be at as a program to win a game like this. I'm like 31-21 A&M.
All right, TJ, what about you?
Yeah, I'll say it's slightly closer, but 34-20. Well, maybe that's the same score. 34-24. I'll go a point closer.
All right, I went 28-17 A&M. Although and I'm trying to sit here as a Florida fan and say, like, do I want A&M to win this so that when Florida comes to town the next week, they're pretty confident, or do I want them to in this slugfest that they eventually lose and there's some emotion in this? I'm gonna side with I want them to win. I don't know. I feel like that might be the safer bet for Gator fans. Not that any is particularly safe, but I love the Mississippi State story, though, and I will be very excited with my cowbell, on the way home from the Florida games, toggling between this and Florida State Miami, because I do think this would be such a cool story, and I am all for the upsets happening. TJ, it's not SEC, but you obviously have a big one this weekend as well, Florida State Miami. I know you're still heartbroken over Friday night's upset loss to Virginia. How do you see that one playing out?
I mean, Florida State's got to tackle better. They've, kind of like what we said, I've said this 3 times now, but you're never as good as your last week and you're never as bad as your last week. And I do think Florida State will play better in this game. I think their offense has been, they're number 1 in the country in total team offense, which is pretty impressive. When you look at just yards per game, I don't know that I expected that. And I'll tell you this, as much as I doubted the Tommy Castellanos pickup in the portal, there were some times in that game on Friday night where he dropped back and it was a complete passing situation. And he delivered the ball very accurately on the 4th and 11 that tied the game to send it to overtime, on the one that Deuce Robinson, the one that got reviewed, and was it a catch? Was it not a catch? That was a great pass. He found the guy wide open in the end zone and put it right on the money. And so their offense has impressed me much more than I thought it would. Defense, certainly a letdown, but they have the ability to play up. As you saw them play against Alabama, I think playing at home in a rivalry game, they'll play really, really well. I probably still like Miami to win this really close just because I do think Miami has been the most impressive team in the country so far this year, but it wouldn't shock me at all if this went the other way and Florida State was able to find a win. So they need to play a little bit better defensively. I thought the scheme was absolute trash. You had a quarterback whose hand was literally fractured and you still are sprained, whatever, and you weren't loading the box up to try and make him beat you deep. And so I think they've got to do a little bit better job coaching, a little bit better job tackling and run fitting. And if they can do that against Miami, which it has a really good offensive line and a really good rushing attack, they'll be fine. And this will be a close game in the 4th quarter, and then we'll just see who comes out on top. A close spread, I think it opened up at like 4.5, 5.5 points. So it's not like they expect Miami to come in and win by 13 or something stupid. But they need to play a little better than they did last week and probably need a few things to go their way in this game, and they'll have a shot. So I don't know. We'll see.
All right. Well, thanks everybody that hung out with us live. This was fun. Again, we do this every Monday morning at 10 a.m. and then you can watch us throughout the week as well. We've all got different things going on our other channels. Will, tell us where they can find you outside of On a Peek Inside SEC Football.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at WThomasSports and Tailgate Talk SEC, just about everywhere else for any SEC content that you guys are looking for.
He also hangs out a lot with me on A Peek Inside Gator Football as well. TJ, tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, TJ _Pittinger on X. And then also you can check out College Football Addiction here on YouTube.
And if you're somehow a Florida State fan that found your way to this channel, Double Fries No Slaw has a lot of good content if you are looking for ACC stuff as well. Thanks for hanging out, guys. We'll do it again next Monday. Have a great week.